I am Jason Haas. Welcome to the Tablas Creek Instagram Live conversation. My guest this week is somebody who I'm excited for you to meet. Her name is Victoria Mason. She is right now a buyer at the Wine Society, which is a private wine club retailer in the UK that has amazing reach and does really remarkable stuff. But she's also a Master of Wine, and her Master of Wine thesis was written on regenerative viticulture. So I can't wait for you to meet her. But as I always do, while we are waiting for people to join, I want to share a few pictures and tell you what's going on at the winery. So I'm going to start with just a beauty shot. Those of you who follow our blog will recognize that last week I published a blog on wildflowers. It is so beautiful out here right now. This is our patio. This is kind of if you were looking towards the back of my head from the other end of the patio, this would be what you would see. It's just stunning. In the vineyard, we are trying to bring the vines under control. You can see here the areas that we have not yet crimped or mowed or spaded are like the cover crop is just about as high as the vines themselves. So we are in the process of going through and mowing, and the first stage ends up looking kind of like this, where you still have that growth of grasses in amongst the vine cordons, but the middle has been mowed or crimped or in some cases spaded. Then we go through afterwards and with what's called a tournesol, so essentially a tractor attachment that allows us to cultivate without really turning the earth over. We get rid of the weeds just in like 1 foot on either side of the vine rows. Let's see if I have a better picture of what that looks like. So you can see how it's basically cut the roots of these grasses on the right and then lays them down, and they act kind of like mulch on top of that bare earth. We are pretty far into bud break, so you do have some varieties that are just kind of starting. This is a Counoise vine that maybe only sprouted a week ago, but that's definitely the anomaly. Most things are out a lot more. This is Grenache. This is pretty much what things look like right now, out 6 inches. And we're even starting to see little flower clusters. So it's a Grenache flower cluster that'll continue to grow. We're not going to see flowering for another month or so, but it's coming. And it's I think it's super exciting. It's always a very hopeful time of year. In the cellar, we are trying to make sure that the last few fermentations, the white fermentations from 2024, are done. This is some white barrels that we're putting out in the sun. It's kind of the daily dance of put the barrels outside where they can warm up, so the native yeasts are given a little extra push, and then bring them back in at night so they don't chill down to the 38 degrees that it's been at night. And then the blends are getting put together. This is us steam cleaning a foudre that we just pumped some Marsanne out of to put into our Côte Tablas block. So anyway, that's the kind of the cleanup phase, both in the cellar and in the vineyard. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing. I am going to invite Victoria to join. And okay. Here we go. Hey, Victoria.
Hello.
How are you?
Hi.
It does. Technology is amazing when it works.
Well, you know that this is my first. This is my first into live, so it was quite a high risk factor tonight.
Well, hopefully it wasn't too stressful in advance. I promise to ask you only very easy questions.
Cool. It was just lovely actually just seeing where the vineyard's at, and those wildflower pictures are stunning. Like, wow.
Yeah, it really is. This is the time of year where you drive around the roads and you sort of pinch yourself. You're like, I get to live here. Like, this is my commute to work, is like wildflowers everywhere, and I occasionally have to slow down because there's turkeys crossing the road. Like, it's lovely.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, it's great to see you.
It is great to see you too. So I'm curious. I like to start by asking people who work in wine, like, was wine a part of like your family table growing up? Like, were your parents into wine, or did you have to come to it on your own?
I would say I came to it on my own. insofar as where I am now, but wine was definitely drunk at home. My parents, they did drink wine, they enjoyed wine. They don't have Instagram, so they won't hear what I'm saying, but they certainly, it would not necessarily have been the sort of quality of wine that they drink now that they have kind of gone through the journey with me. So there would be wine around about the table, and certainly at sort of, Christmas or whatever, then we would be given little tasters. But my earliest memory, well, I don't know if it was a memory, but of sort of tasting wine was actually with my Italian godmother. So my Auntie Carmela, she looked after me from when I was little, and she used to give me red wine with lemonade, or perhaps it was lemonade with red wine. I'm sure it was only a drop. But that's something that I remember walking around parties with a little beaker when I was only small. So.
Perfect. What a lovely Italian tradition to. So, what was your first experience with like wine in its own right? Like, do you remember a first wine experience beyond the wine and lemonade?
Well, there was a holiday, or there were a couple of holidays, probably certainly as I was an older teenager, with family holidays, and there was one where we were sort of visiting various different ports on the Western Med, and we stopped. We had the opportunity to kind of go to a wine tasting in Tuscany, and I remember this really. I have no idea who the producer was. I don't even know what appellation we were in, but I imagine we were in Chianti or Chianti Classico, but I'm not sure. But what I do remember was just sort of these long. It was summer, long tables out, sort of. Not in the vineyards, but sort of outside, surrounded by olive trees, very much in that kind of Tuscan way where there's a lot going on. It's not just vines; there's lots of other plants and trees. And I just remember, yeah, I mean, I don't know if it was a wine tasting so much as a drinking, because they were quite sizable pours that the Italians gave us, and homemade bread, local olive oil, and I remember the conviviality of that, and I remember just the joy of sharing wine. I don't remember what I learned, and I don't remember what I was drinking as such, but the feeling of what wine can do in terms of bringing people together, especially when you're enjoying it outside where it's made. It definitely, and I was probably about 16 at the time, that sort of age, so that stays with me.
I bet. I mean, and what a great introduction. I don't think it matters at all that you don't remember where it was, or even really what the wine tasted like, because like that's sort of not the point. That's
No.
this was an introduction to kind of the culture of wine, or at least the togetherness of wine.
Yes, and it's that, isn't it? Actually, it's the feeling, it's how the wine makes you feel that is.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that for me is what sort of pulled me in, and kind of started me on my journey.
So if I remember right, your first kind of like work position in wine was as a buyer with Waitrose. Is that right? But I think I read that you actually started in the horticulture department and not in the wine department. How did that all happen?
So it was actually, so I started at Waitrose on a graduate scheme, sort of post university,
Okay.
and worked in retail. So I worked in stores. I worked in central London stores, and actually, funnily enough, I was obviously working shift work because it's a supermarket and open in London, open till quite late. And that was when that's when I first started to spend time sort of in the wine department of the stores. And Waitrose has a network of wine specialists, so
Right.
specialists who do their WSET, in some cases up to level 4. But I remember in the very first store I worked in, which was Mallow and High Street, I remember talking to the wine specialist there and just asking questions, reading the back of wine labels, reading the back of bottles. And so there was something there. I didn't know what exactly, but something that was interesting to me. And I wanted to do a wine course, but it was too difficult with the sort of irregularity of shift work and not having the same evening off every week.
Right.
So it was later when I moved into head office as a trainee buyer, and I had those sort of regular hours, that I started doing an evening wine course, not a qualification, just an introduction to wine. And that kind of accelerated as my first appointed role as a buyer was in the horticulture team, and I was buying outdoor horticulture, outdoor plants, and Also Christmas trees, which makes quite a few people smile, that my job was Christmas tree buyer. That's not what I spent 52 weeks of the year doing. But, and actually it was quite, in terms of the two things that were happening, I was starting to study my WSET at this point because the kind of bug had got me. And I was spending a lot of time on the road visiting our growers. It was a mostly kind of British grower sourced assortment.
Okay.
And with plants, you've got sort of that moment to get them in the stores when they're just about to, if it's a flowering plant, just about to flower. So I was spending a lot of time actually starting to think about growing and thinking about plants. I don't come from a science background, so I didn't have a plant biology background. And this was happening at the same time as I was learning about wine. And in terms of the seamless transition from horticulture to the wine buying, it wasn't. I had got to my level 3 at this point. I had about 3 years of buying experience, 3.5 years of buying experience under my belt, and I just had a huge enthusiasm for wine. I obviously didn't have the experience or the expertise that Waitrose's team is known in the industry for
Yeah.
being incredibly knowledgeable, and so I think I got by on sheer enthusiasm and also a strong retail background because I understood how our stores worked.
Right.
So yes, moved from plants to the produce of plants.
Cool. What was the first region that you visited, first wine region that you visited sort of at this stage in your journey?
So my first roles of responsibility included South Africa, which won't surprise you given how my passion for South Africa has developed, and also the Loire Valley. So actually the poster behind me was on my very first buying trip in June 2016. So I had just, I was actually going out because it had been a really difficult frost at the end of April across the Loire Valley. And I was going out to really understand the extent of the damage and just to check in with the growers. So the Loire was the first official trip, but the first region that properly imprinted on me was South Africa.
Cool. I was going to ask you about your sort of love for South Africa, and we'll get to that in a second. But before I do that, I wanted to ask you sort of what it is about the academic study of wine that appeals to you. I mean, if you've gone through the WSET and you've done the Master of Wine, I mean, these are like tremendously detailed academic pursuits, and why?
So I think I naturally have an inclination to. I think I'm probably one of those people that fits in that class of sort of eternal students. I love to learn, and I do. I enjoy both. I enjoy book learning, but I also enjoy practical learning. And I think that for me, what wine opened up, and actually this is my boss when I was a horticulture buyer, an incredible woman called Emma Coop, who was I always said the horticultural equivalent of a master of wine. If there was such a thing as a master of horticulture, that was her. But what she identified in me, I need to be learning all the time, and I need that sort of challenge. And I think what she identified that I had found in wine was something that was going to keep me curious literally forever, for my entire career. And this whole idea, the idea of being a master of wine is actually that's just the beginning of the journey. You're here, and every single interaction you have with a fellow wine professional, with a grower, with a viticulturist, with a winemaker, kind of opens up something else to you. So I think there was this natural curiosity, but then it was also just how diverse the subject of wine is. As I mentioned before, I don't have a science background, but I enjoy science, so kind of understanding the science and the chemistry, but then all the history, the cultural stuff, the geographical elements, and it's just sort of, there is no way that you can ever get tired. If you're tired of this, then there's a problem.
And it's one of the things that really appeals to me about everybody who I've met who has been a part of the Master of Wine program or is a Master of Wine is like that curiosity shines through. I mean, it really the fact that like this is already like a really high bar to clear, and yet everyone who I have met who is a Master of Wine like is full of questions and full of new things that they're exploring and learning, which I find incredibly appealing.
Yeah, of course. I think that it's almost. I also think there's a general misconception, probably in the world or in the industry about what master of wine, what master of wine means, and if actually what it is it's a very generalist qualification. You have to. I always remember Tim Atkins saying to me, you sort of have to go this sort of wide, but you have to. But there's only certain points that you can afford to go really deep into, because
Right.
you otherwise you just simply won't cover it. So this idea that you're an expert on all of wine obviously is a fallacy, but it's this kind of really fantastic foundation and base knowledge, and actually, as you say, this questioning and continually questioning and critiquing and learning, which I think should define an MW, and you have to love it. If you don't love it, you wouldn't put yourself through those years of study, because there are times when it's not fun, obviously.
Yeah, it's a lot. So can you talk about your Master of Wine diploma that you did on regenerative viticulture and in South Africa, I believe, right? Am I right that it was regenerative viticulture in South Africa?
Yes, exactly. So when it came to the research paper is the third and final stage of the MW qualification, and this is really, so we were told when you're studying for the theory exams, you'll have these topics which become your sort of pet topics, and the topics that you actually go far deeper into than you have time to really for the exams, but you just can't help it. And so they always say, like, store up those topics or those areas of interest, because then when you get to the research paper, you can really pursue them. So I knew at this point, and actually I was thinking about this. It was interesting. It was in conversation. It was with a sort of Zoom interview I was doing with Evo from Gurgit Hills. So this would have been in 2021. And I was starting to get obsessed with soil health, like, and starting. Well, it was beginning at that point, and I was sort of
Welcome to
reading
the club.
yeah, exactly. This sort of mind-blowing microscopic world was starting to open up to me, and it was a conversation with him, and he used this lovely little metaphor that really stuck with me when he was talking, because I'd sort of been studying soil from almost a chemical. I was thinking about its chemical and physical properties, but I hadn't been thinking about its biological properties. And he sort of said, you know, soil without microbes is like a fridge which is locked. You know, without the key, you can't access that nutrition. The microbes are the key to accessing that nutrition. And it's so simple now, but at that point, 4 years ago, I wasn't even thinking in that way. I didn't have that sort of access to this kind of crazy microbial world beneath our feet, and so I knew I wanted to do something connected to soil health, but the problem was within the scope of the research paper, you know, this needs to be completed within 1.5 to 2 years. There couldn't be any, it couldn't be a viticultural trial or experiment. And I also don't actually have the knowledge base for that. I'm not a viticulturalist. So I started to think about how could I explore the topic of restoring and regenerating soils and creating a vineyard as an ecosystem which could sustain itself, everything that you're doing at Tablas. And I realized that the way to do that was actually to kind of investigate, I guess, perceptions of wine growers to the enablers and the barriers of practicing what we are now calling regenerative viticulture. So I could get into the subject, I could get deep into the geeky technical detail, but ultimately what I was exploring were the factors that were stopping growers from working in a certain way, and the factors that were encouraging, enabling, facilitating them to do so. And I focused on Stellenbosch in South Africa. South Africa, because that is my area of expertise, but also from a climatic point of view, an arid, drought-prone climate.
Right.
We know that water scarcity is the biggest challenge facing, I mean, all of us, but the African continent. And so the kind of imperative to build up soil organic matter and build up water holding capacity in soils is really critical to the future of the industry. So that was why I selected that region to dive into.
So cool. Yeah, I mean, I think that really is. If people don't already realize that in the Mediterranean zones around the world, like water scarcity is like the biggest challenge that like we will all have to deal with. So kudos. Okay, let's uh, let's let's talk about the Wine Society. There's really nothing like it in the United States. I mean, it is really a remarkable entity. Can you talk about sort of what it is and does?
Sure. Well, I don't even know if there's anything like the Wine Society anywhere else in the world. I would
Yeah.
love to hear if there was. So for all sort of non-UK audience, but also for everyone in the UK. So the Wine Society is essentially, we are an online retailer, but we are an online wine club. So in order to buy wine from the Wine Society, you do have to be a member. But that is the sort of the barrier to entry is very low. It's a one-off fee for a lifetime membership, and you get back half of that against wine immediately. And all of our delivery of wine is free. So effectively, once you've done one or two orders, you've made back your membership fee. So the barrier to becoming a member is not high. But then you're a part of a cooperative. So as a business, we are a cooperative. We don't have any shareholders. We don't have any kind of external. We're not held account to anyone other than our members. So we have a committee which is made up of members, elected members, who help guide the direction of the business, along with our CEO and our executive leadership team. And so what that means, and so I've bought wine in, well, this is now the third very different retail setting. So on the one hand, in a supermarket, albeit a premium supermarket. On the other hand, for a fine wine merchant, very much at the other end of the spectrum, dealing in the super premium wines of the world. And then the Wine Society is this wonderful sort of, it covers all of that. So we work with wines, the entire spectrum, and we. So the thing I was going to say was, it was unique that as a wine buyer, I am completely empowered to make the right decisions based on our membership, based on the quality of the quality of the wines, and for our producers. And many of those producer relationships are decades long, in some cases over 100 years. The Wine Society is 151 years old. And so it's sort of uniquely satisfying and fulfilling as a buyer, because you have a long-term strategy, and you can work with your growers on long-term goals, and you have a community of wine lovers to buy wine for, truly people who truly love wine, and are also open to discovering and exploring new things with you through the Wine Society. So yeah, it's wonderful.
I mean, and the other thing I think is so cool about the fact that it is a private club that is responsible to its members is that this is not a profit maximizing sort of enterprise. The idea is that, I mean, you obviously have to make enough money to sustain your operations, but like, you're able to offer the things that you buy at really nice prices because your goal is not to squeeze every last pound out of each wine that you sell.
Yeah, and there are things that we can do. For example, we buy wines and we store wines for our members to release after 5 years, after 10 years, in some cases after 20 years. We have a budget for that, and we have stock, because we appreciate that actually in modern life most people don't have cellars. I mean, I live in a flat and I definitely don't have a cellar. So actually, to be able to buy the great wines of the world and to release them to our membership when they are ready for drinking is great. But so we can actually choose to put money aside to do that. And in this year, in 2025, when across the world we're all facing into so much economic uncertainty, as well as political uncertainty, but we are looking at the kind of on costs to our business, which are various, from new duty legislation to new business rates, and the costs are huge. I mean, they add up to almost 5 million for the Wine Society, and we're not a big business, but the decision that we have made this year is that we don't expect to make a profit this year. Obviously, we'll make enough money to keep everything working and to continue sourcing, but we can make that decision, and that's not a decision that, it's a very different way of doing business. And yeah, but I think it's also, we're doing well within a difficult context. So it kind of shows that different ways of doing, we do need to rethink how we do business, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, I think businesses all over the world are facing those same questions, and I think the ones that are going to be successful are the ones that are going to kind of reinvent themselves a little bit in a way that doesn't just say, well, okay, our input costs are 15% higher, we're going to pass along 15% more cost to our customers.
Yeah, yeah. That's because that's very difficult to make that work going forward.
Yeah, I mean, we feel like it's an opportunity for us to actually capture some new customers by not doing things like that
Yeah,
when other people are.
yeah.
So you were brought on board last May, I think, to cover the regions that Sarah Knowles, who is another master of wine and who was a guest on this Instagram live
In 20,
2 or 3 years ago.
yeah, one
Uh,
of the first, I think. Yeah.
so you were covering her territories. So what are those territories and what has that been like?
So I'm covering for Sarah, who is not only a wonderful colleague but a great friend of mine. So we've been probably friends in the industry for around 5 or 6 years. She supported me through my MW studies. She was there cracking the whip at the Stage 2 seminar, always with much hilarity, and she's wonderful. So she is on maternity leave, and she will return to the Wine Society in a couple of months' time. I came in on a fixed term contract to cover her maternity leave, so covering all of her buying areas. So Italy, which is a country that I have bought since 2019 and is a country that I love. USA, of course, which means I get the joy of working with you for this year. And Champagne as well. So I came in knowing that I would be doing this role for 12 months approximately, but really just excited to join a business that I had admired for such a long time, had been a member of. I'm a member of the Wine Society, and I just thought it's a 1 year opportunity, but it's an opportunity to work with some fantastic people, some incredible producers, and actually, again, take a different kind of buying experience. And so that's what I've come in and done, and things have sort of changed along the way. And I, as you know, I will be staying on at the Wine Society on a permanent basis, but in a new role, which we are forging currently, so to speak.
Cool, and I do want to talk about that because I think that's incredibly exciting. Um,
Yes.
but I do, before we move off of it, like it seems like California was a new area of responsibility for you, and I'm curious, like, were the wines that you got to dive into from California, were they what you expected? Like, I guess, did California like confirm or confound what you had thought you would find beforehand?
Great question. So first of all, I've never been to California, which is very sad, and which is something I hope to rectify in 2026. Actually, so my knowledge of the wines, and as you say, I've never bought California, I've never bought the US professionally, and probably because there's only so much wine we can drink, so I probably haven't drunk really widely within California. I think I have what I have really loved to discover, and I was talking about it with a friend in the trade yesterday evening as we were drinking a very lovely mature bottle of Rich, was the sort of the I mean, this is the era that a whole swathe of California is now in, of these elegant, fresh, energetic wines. And I think of Tablas wines, and the freshness and the precision and the definition of fruit in wines in this hot Mediterranean climate, as you talk about, has surprised me, because it's not necessarily the perception, and I mean, even on an industry level, I mean,
Yeah,
people who are knowledgeable and experienced, there's still a an expectation, that these are big, ripe wines, and that, of course, that's true of a segment of the industry. But there are so many elegant wines there that I found really exciting to discover, and from new appellations, whether it's like West Sonoma Coast, or, wines that I find really thrilling. So that has been exciting. That has been really exciting.
that's so cool because that's certainly what I think is the most exciting about what's going on in California right now. So I'm happy that that came through in what you got to what you have gotten to explore over the last year.
Definitely.
Um, so um, so you're going to be taking a little sabbatical, if I understand right, and then rejoining the Wine Society in September. And one of the responsibilities that you will have is to oversee the Wine Society's climate and nature program.
Yes.
Um, can you talk about what that is and like I think it's incredibly cool. But can you talk about what it is
Of
and
course.
what your ideas are for it, if you have any that you can share?
Sure. So first of all, the Wine Society's Climate and Nature Programme was launched to the world last year. I think it was about last spring. It was actually just before. It was the thing that clinched my decision to apply for what was a temporary job. So I just completed my research paper, and in looking at enablers and barriers to the practice of regenerative viticulture, there are many interesting enablers and barriers, but if you were to group them into the two biggest buckets, so to speak, on both sides, they were around knowledge. So knowledge sharing being an enabler, and lack of knowledge and a technical skill being an inhibitor. And they were around economics, which again won't surprise you. And actually, the barriers cited were overwhelmingly economic, and there were some practical barriers as well. But I had just finished this piece of work, which in my conclusions, I sort of made an argument and made a call for the fact that the wider wine industry needs to take responsibility and play a role in investing in the growers, because the whole supply chain needs to affect this change, and that can't just land on the growers. So I sort of had my conclusion. I was, finessing, and the Wine Society announced this program, which is the brainchild and the work of our Director of Sustainability, Dom DeVille. And I was just so inspired and kind of knew, regardless of the fact I might not have a job in a year, that I had to go for that. And so I joined the Wine Society in May, just as we've more or less closed the first round of applications for the Climate and Nature Programme, which I will now explain. And I got straight stuck into the judging and all the rest of it. So the programme itself is essentially an annual pot of money, which is it's a minimum is 60K. It's not a huge pot of money, but we work with mainly small and medium-sized producers, and actually, a chunk of 5K, for example, can go quite a long way. Yep. So it's an annual pot of money which our growers can apply to for to implement a regenerative project in the vineyard, or so something which improves sequesters carbon in the soil, improves soil organic matter, enhances biodiversity in the vineyard. There are a number of projects which we sort of, a number of directions a project could go in, but essentially it's to help the growers kickstart something, and it might be a one-off application they make for something for 1 year. It may be a 3-year program, because obviously we acknowledge that a lot of work in vineyards takes multiple years, and frankly longer than 3 years. And then a key part of that, of supporting that, is then taking the learnings from the growers around the world. The first program had 11 different winners from 6 different countries, and to actually share those learnings, and also share the things that perhaps didn't go to plan or didn't work, and create what we feel that we can do. We work with hundreds of growers, as we can also connect growers, and we can kind of act as we can facilitate some of that knowledge sharing. So that's what the Climate and Nature Programme is. In it launching last year, I think we suddenly realised that this was actually a huge piece of work internally, in terms of us then the ongoing support of the growers, the ongoing communication with what they're doing, and sharing what they're doing with the rest of the supply base, as well as with our membership. And clearly, Dom and I also have ambitions that we might grow this pot, and there are creative ways that we might grow this pot, and there are ways that we can bring our members in to sort of support and grow that. So we know we have people that are actively looking to sort of invest their money and make their buying decisions rooted in this sort of approach to farming. So I think we are just at the beginning, and the idea is that I will still be a buyer, but that will be about 60% of my time, and buying areas TBC. But 40% of my time, so a good 5 days a week, I can be exclusively on the climate and nature program, which I don't think we haven't even mapped out. We've sort of written my job description, or I've written my job description, but we haven't worked out just quite what we can achieve yet. And we'll get into the detail of that in September for sure.
So exciting. Okay, so I cannot believe that it has been half an hour, but it has been half an hour already. I have one more real question, and then I want to ask you how people can learn more about your journey and also about the Wine Society. But my last real question is, am I right that you're heading back to South Africa for the sabbatical, or at least some of the sabbatical in between when this position ends and when your new one starts in September?
Yes.
So I guess it's sort of a two-part question. Like, what are you planning to do, if there's things that you can share? And can you talk a little bit about what it is about South Africa that keeps drawing you back?
Sure. Okay, so what I'm planning to do, first and foremost, actually really exciting. I'm glad you've asked me this question because I would have forgot to tell you. So one of the outcomes of my research paper in terms of kind of recommendations was around actually bringing growers together in South Africa and kind of kicking off with a bit of a regenerative viticulture workshop with a sort of immersion day. And so I so the Regenerative Viticulture Foundation, I know you spoke with Stephen Crunk not so long ago, the RVF. I have linked up with Vimpro, which is one of South Africa's trade bodies, who represents 2,600 growers, and their Gen Z project. So Emma Carkeep from there, and we have built a agenda for our first ever South African regenerative viticulture workshop, which is on the 11th of June and will be held in Stellenbosch. We have got international speaker as well as a lineup of incredible growers across the Cape sharing what they're doing, going from everything from sort of mixed farming and integrating animals into the vineyard to no-till systems and composting. So that's what that was sort of in the plan. That's been in the plan since last April, and we're almost at fruition. So that's what I'll be sort of flying out for initially. Then I'm going to be doing some judging work and some writing work for WSC and Club Enologique for almost that sort of first month. Then my plan beyond that is basically to spend time. So I've got probably about 5 or 6 growers that I want to spend more meaningful time with in the vineyard in the winter when it's all happening. And actually, you know, my time spent, I've done 3 harvests. I've worked during harvest season, but I've never been in the vineyard, working in the vineyard. But all of that work is doing in terms of replenishing the soil. And so I'm going to do that, and I'm going to learn. I'm going to do from different, so from sort of the Cape South Coast to more up in the Northern Cape and into the Swartland in different climatic areas. And I just want to our point earlier around learning and the journey, like this is, for me, this is just the next step, and it's to get to a deeper level of understanding, you know. And I'm still going to be an observer. I'm not going to be physically the you know, farming, but I just want to understand and I just want to understand on a greater level. And obviously that ties in really nicely with then the work that I'll be doing going forward for the Wine Society. In terms of why South Africa, what keeps on bringing me back to South Africa. Now, actually, it was with a Californian winemaker. She's not Californian, she's Colombian, but Bibiana, of Cattleya. She was over a couple of months ago, and I was just back from June harvest in the Swartland. And she has done a couple of harvests in South Africa, actually, with Andrew and Chris Molyneux and others. And she, you know how sometimes another person captures how you feel, but you haven't quite articulated it in that way. And she said that it's almost like the entire energy of the planet sort of emanates from South Africa. Like, it just has this incredible energy, this dramatic landscapes, but I think it's the energy, and of course then it's the people, and it's the huge warmth and hospitality that you know, when something gets under your skin and you can't really rationalize that, but it just keeps drawing me back. So I'm just listening to that call, basically.
Sounds amazing. Love. Well, Victoria, thank you so much for taking a piece out of your Wednesday evening to share your story. If people want to follow you, see what you do in the future, and if they want to learn more about the Wine Society, what's the best way for them to do that?
So the Wine Society, our website is thewinesociety.com. For any of our producers who are listening, they will know this in any case, but we have just today actually launched our second climate and nature program, and there are 6 weeks until that closes on the 6th of June. So do get in touch either with your buyer or with Dom. And I guess myself, I'm here on the Instagram, on my Instagram channel. My email, etc., is available through the IMW, and always happy and welcome to hear from people with similar interests. So yeah, do get in touch.
Lovely. Well, thank you. It's been such a pleasure. I hope to see you in California soon, and I hope to see you in the UK hopefully before then.
Yes. Oh, likewise. I hope we pull off our plan for this autumn. Fingers
Yes,
crossed.
yes. Look for an email soon.
Yes, brilliant. Thank you so
Okay,
much, Jason. It's
lovely.
been lovely
Thank you
to
so
chat
much,
to you.
Victoria.
All the best. Cheers.
And thank you for everyone who joined us. I will be back in 2 weeks. Until then, I hope you have a lovely spring wherever you are.